sherry in it, or wine in it, or bourbon in it. Or it could be a brand new oak barrel. But it has to have been an oak barrel. It has to be less than 74% alcohol by volume, 68 to some rules. When it's put in the bottle, it has to be at least 40%. It has to live 3 years in that oak cask before it's put in a barrel, or it's not scotch. It has to be at least 40%. And the only thing that you can add to that whiskey when you take it out of the barrel is water to reduce the strength, or caramel coloring for consistency. So basic rules. Bourbon, very similar, has to be made in the United States, 2 years in an oak cask, a brand new oak cask never used before. So guess what the guys in Scotland love? Barrels that have been used one time by Americans, and we're not going to use them anymore. So that's why a lot of scotches are finished in American ex-bourbon barrels. Matter of fact, not Glenfiddich, but a company named Glenmorangie actually has bought forests in Missouri, and they make their own casks and rent them to Jack Daniels and Jim Beam. When they're done with them, they take them whole, they don't break them down, and ship them back to Scotland and put their whiskey in them. So the rules are set by the Scotch Whisky Association of Scotland. If you vary from those rules, you can't call it scotch. So made in Scotland is the big thing, living 3 years in a cask. So there's a number on the bottle. This bottle says 12 years. That's the youngest whiskey in this bottle. It may have 20-year-old in it, it may have 18-year-old, it may have 17-year-old in it. But the youngest whiskey in this bottle is 12 years old. If you mix all those different ages from all those different barrels at the same distillery, made at the same distillery, stored at the same distillery, it's a single malt. If you have 40 casks of Glenfiddich and 1 cask of Dalmore, you now have a blended or a vatted whiskey. Vatted, they're not using the term anymore, they're using blended. So blended is from 2 or more distilleries. So a single malt is from a single distillery. So the process to make whiskey is very simple. Before we get to that, let's smell this. So there's some rules about smelling whiskey. We'll go through the whole process. We're going to smell this, we're going to start desensitizing, and I'm going to go through the whole process. So just get your nose right in the glass, both sides. And it's going to burn a little. So to make whiskey, we start with 3 things. We need some barley, we need some water, and we need some yeast. We don't need anything else, just the right conditions. So you're going to take the barley, and you're going to put it on a malting floor, and you're going to get that barley with a little water in it, in the right conditions, temperature, and you're going to let it start to germinate. And just when it thinks it's going to grow up and be a great big barley plant, you arrest that stage by heating it or putting smoke on it to heat it to arrest the germination. So there's just that little bit of green poking out of that barley. Now you're going to take that and you're going to put it in a vat. And you're going to fill it with a water at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. That's called a ton, T-U-N, a wash tun or just a ton. At that point, you're going to let that water soak all of those natural sugars out of that barley. You're going to take that water and put it into a different aging tun, and you are going to pitch yeast in it. And you're going to leave that yeast in that sugar water for a certain amount of time, and you're going to produce alcohol. It's called a wort, W-O-R-T. It's about a 7, 8, or 9% alcohol. It tastes like if you took some milk and heated it up on the stove and poured some real nasty whiskey in it and took a little drink of it, that's what it tastes like. It's awful. They're going to take that wort and they're going to put it in a still, and they're going to distill the lightest spirits off of it until it comes to the level that they want it to, percentage-wise of alcohol. You're going to take that and put it in oak casks, and you're going to taste that. After 3 years, you're going to start tasting that whiskey. You're going to try to figure out which one of those casks is going to become a single malt. Some at 12 years have reached their peak. Some don't reach their peak till 50 years. But there's a problem. We're going to get to that 50-year point. Alcohol is going to start to lose its strength because of something that's called, heard The Devil's Cut by Jim Beam? Talk about wringing every last drop out of the barrel. Well, it's called the Devil's Cut because the angels took their share first. Anytime you set a cask of whiskey, no matter the conditions, you're going to lose 1 to 2% of that whiskey a year. So let's say you take a port pipe, about 660 liters, and you put whiskey in it. Every year it loses 1 to 2 liters. it stays in there for 50 years, you have the potential for it to fall below 40% alcohol. That happens, it's no longer scotch, and it's no longer usable. So if it's a cask that they're watching to become a single malt, they're going to start to bottle that at somewhere about 41 to 42%. Hopefully higher, but not necessarily. At that point that it's getting close to 40, if it's still not good enough to be a single malt, they're going to mix it into their vatting. There might be 50-year-old in this 12, who knows? If the whiskey's not good enough to be a single malt by itself, it becomes a single malt or a single cask in particular. If you take one cask and you bottle the whiskey out of it, it's called a single cask. Same with bourbon and single barrel is what they call that. So we're going to talk about the distillery of Glenfiddich, but first let's get some whiskey in us. So 3 processes. We're going to look at it, we're going to smell it, and we're going to taste it. So we're going to describe our whiskey by looking at it in the glass. What color is that? Straw, golden, amber, all kind of fall in that same category. So by looking at this whiskey, it's not a light color, it's not a pale color, it's got a little color to it, right? So we know that at least some of the whiskey in this has been in a sherry cask or some type of wine cask, because it's got a little hint of a mahogany color to it, just a hint. If you poured a pure whiskey that's never been anything except an American ex-bourbon or an oak cask, it's going to be almost a yellow, almost a bright yellow color. We start to get that little bit of shade of mahogany and that deepness to it, we know. We know that Glenfiddich, all of their whiskeys have spent some time in an American oak cask, ex-bourbon cask, and some time in a sherry cask. So this is the 12-year-old. So now we described the color. Let's get a nose. Little trick here. We're going to smell it on one side, and we're going to smell it on the other side. See if you can tell a difference, and there should be a difference. Now the right side and then the left side. You should get 2 different smells. Now bury your nose in it. And that's a totally different smell than the other 2, the 2 combined. We're going to desensitize. Some of you haven't had any alcohol, some of you had a beer. This first bolt of whiskey we're going to get is going to give us a little burn. Let's get rid of the burn. Put it in your mouth, squish it around, swallow it, and ignore it.
Okay.
Got a little burn there, right? Because you haven't had any harsh alcohol yet. So now we're going to start the process over. We won't have to do this for the rest of them. We'll be desensitized. I want you to put your nose in it, and I want you to describe as best you can what you smell.
Oak.
Oak? Absolutely, it's got oak. Getting anything else? I'm getting fruit.
Yeah, pears maybe?
Pears. Apple, crisp apple, green apple. I'm getting a light, fruity. We're going to describe whiskey into 3 categories. Light and fruity, rich and round, smoky and peaty. Glenfiddich 12 definitely falls in the light and fruity category. So now we're going to nose it and take it right to our mouth and get a little sip and hold it on your tongue. Keep it on your tongue. Try to find the flavors in the whiskey past the burn. The burn's going to go away after this whiskey, but right now, what can you taste in there? What?
Sugar.
Sugar? What kind of sugar?
It's either apple or pear for this one. I can pick up the hints of, like you said, the sherry cask. I can get the wine taste to it.
A little wine taste to it.
I think the pear's spot on.
The pears are huge in this, right?
I feel a little bit of a buttery taste.
And I'm gonna put it all together for you. You've got some sweet in the pears. You've got a little oak. You've got a little buttery. It's almost like a toffee.
Yeah.
So you got the fruit with the toffee. That's very typical of a sherry cask whiskey. So this time, it's a dumb rule, but it works. Someone took time to watch this whiskey in a barrel for 12 years. I want you to hold it in your mouth for 12 seconds. And I want you to count 12 seconds. Put it in your mouth, put it under your tongue, over your tongue, squish it around, and then we're going to see if we get a different flavor this time. So my first question is, where's the abundance of flavor? On the tip of your tongue, on the side of your tongue, or in the back of your tongue?
Sides.
On the sides.
12 seconds gives a very English toffee.
Yep, very much. Treacle toffee almost.
Yes.
You ever had treacle toffee from London, from Britain? It's got that very much flavor. So it's on the side of your tongue. You're getting some sweet more than anything. Front of your tongue's a little sweet. The side's a little sweet and a little acid. The back's a lot of acid. The back and the middle's bitter. So most of it's on the side of our tongues. So it's a fruity, light, creme brulee style, toffee style scotch. So now we're going to do something totally different. Everybody got a little bit left? I want everyone to get a milk chocolate. So while we're doing that, let's talk about Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich Distillery was founded by William Grant and his 7 sons, 2 daughters, and his wife starting in 1886. They built the entire distillery brick by hand. Today it has 28 different stills that it uses to produce its whiskey. It's in its 5th generation of William Grant's family. It still belongs to the family. It's one of the few that do. They've actually expanded. Not only they own Glenfiddich, they own Balvenie, Monkey Shoulder, Kinvinny. They've got a very large portfolio of whiskeys now. But it's in a town called Dufftown, which is in the Speyside of Scotland. Glenfiddich means Glen is valley. Fiddick is typically it's the valley of the deer, but Fiddick typically was by the river Fiddick, which was the Deer River. They get their water from the Robin Dew springs, all local, all Speyside, typical Speyside type whiskey. But this is one of the few still from day one to today family owned. Hasn't been bought out by Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Pernod Ricard, or any of the big names. They still own it. All right, so now back to the Glenfiddich. On your tongue, let it start to melt. About half of it. Do the whole thing, it's great. We got plenty. Let it get soft before you taste the whiskey. Let the chocolate melt, let it get soft. And I want you to put the whiskey on your tongue with the chocolate and let them blend together. Now what did that taste like? Dessert,
Even more toffee.
more toffee.
Yes.
It gave it a depth of flavor that it didn't have before.
More caramel.
More caramel,
Yeah.
so more of that creme brulee.
Yeah.
What we did was we introduced a light, creamy, wonderful chocolate with a light, fruity, toffee style whiskey, and we've got a unique mouth experience. Now when I nose whiskey and taste whiskey for the first time, it takes me somewhere. I want it to create a memory or remind me of a memory. Chocolate reminds us all of something. So you take a young whiskey like this and you put chocolate with it, it gives you something from your life that you have, that you will remember, or this day that you'll remember. Because it creates, our lives we revolve around what we hear, what we see, what we smell, and what we taste. Because if you remember somewhere that you are, you remember because of one of those experiences. You had a great time. You had a great time because of what you drank, because you got a taste in the whole century, or the music you were listening to, or the conversation you were having. So we make whiskey that same experience. All right, let's move to the next one. The 18-year-old. I'm skipping the 15, right? For a reason. The 18-year has won 7 gold, or the 15-year has won 7 gold medals. It's one of the best whiskeys Glenfiddich has ever done. The 18 is outstanding. I put the 15 above it. So we're going to go straight to the 18. This 18-year-old, the same as the 12. The youngest whiskey in this bottle is how old?
15 years.
18 years old.
Oh, 18, sorry.
It's 18 years old. The youngest. Made at the same distillery. The youngest whiskey spent 18 years in a single cask, pouring casks. Once again, ex-American oak, ex-sherry cask. So, how many of you drink sherry?
A little bit.
A little bit.
What is sherry?
So, who does not know what sherry is?
I do not.
Sherry is most of it's made in Jerez, Spain. It's either Gonzalez Baez, Pedro Jimenez, Oloroso. This is Oloroso sherry. Sherry is a wine that's laid down in a cask laying on its side, and a flora or fauna is introduced into it, a bacteria. And it grows on the top of it, it lays on the side. It gives it a unique flavor and it gives it a unique sweetness. So it becomes a wine that has been, just like we make cheese with mold, they're using a type of bacteria to change the flavor of that wine. In the 40s, 50s, and 60s, sherry was used for cooking. Women drank sherry. Sherry was everywhere. Sherry casks are very expensive. A single sherry cask, American oak cask, costs about $125 to $150. And it's a 53-liter cask. A sherry cask is typically about a 300 to 350-liter cask. People don't drink sherry anymore. So the sherry makers got really smart. They make really good sherry and they pour it out in the street and they sell their cask for $1,000 to the whiskey guys. They weren't going to make $1,000 on the whiskey or the sherry because they can't sell it anymore. They sell a little but not a lot, so they just produce it, dump it out, and sell the casks. So, Oloroso sherry. You guys ever drank McCuller? It's exclusively Oloroso sherry from Jerez, Spain. Glenfiddich pretty much exclusively uses Oloroso sherry casks as well. So sometimes you make your whiskey in an American oak cask, and then you take it out of that, and for a certain number of years you put it in a sherry cask, and that's called marrying a whiskey. In this case, Glenfiddich uses American oak casks and sherry casks, and they spend 18 years in each of those casks, and then they mix them together and pour them in a bottle and produce it. So it's not married, it's truly put together in the distillery to make a unique single malt. All right, let's have a look at this one. Lighter or darker than the last one? Darker. Well, and why would we say that?
Spend more time on the sherry.
Spend more time in a cask. It's got more, 18 years in a sherry cask mixed with some American oak. So we got a deeper, richer, and I'm truly gonna call this a light mahogany. So we're gonna get a nose of this. Both sides, in the middle. What do you smell? You've had Oloroso sherry, you definitely smell Oloroso sherry.
I know that.
So you smell the sherry.
I smell the grapes, for sure.
What else?
This one's more floral than the other one.
Floral, what flower?
Rose?
What?
Rose?
Yep. What else do you smell? I smell a spice.
Yeah.
What spice do you smell? Cinnamon. What else do you smell?
Plum?
You get some plum.
Yeah.
I get the dark fruits, and I'm more of a dark cherry on this than I am a plum, but they're both there.
I can see whoever said clove. I like to come up and get a little bit of that.
Maybe a hint of clove. Cinnamon's the primary spice in this. All right, same trick this time. We're going to take it to our nose, go straight to our palate, and hold it for 18 seconds. What do you get?
Cherries.
What?
Cherries.
Cherries. Lots of dark fruits.
Lots of dark fruits, yeah.
Lots of dark fruits in this. And surprisingly, because you didn't get that on the nose really, got a little plum, but you didn't really get dark cherries. Kind of what it puts there.
This one is more front tongue than side.
The front tongue, and I get a little bitter right in the middle and the back. Part of that's burned. All right, so this time, get a second little sip. Enjoy the flavor. And now last time we complemented our whiskey with some chocolate. This time we're going to contrast the whiskey with some brie cheese on a wheat thin. I want both flavors together. I want the wheat and I want the brie. And I left the rind on the brie for a reason, because I want the sharpness of it. Yeah, absolutely.
No.
So different this time than holding it in your mouth. I want you to eat the cheese and cracker, completely swallow it. When it's all down, then I want you to put that whiskey back in your mouth and just hold it for 3 or 4 seconds. So eat the whole thing. And now when you swallow it, what did you taste from the whiskey?
Spice.
What?
Spice.
The spice. Now you pick up the cinnamon. How was it? Different, right? Very unique. What we did is with that, we chose brie because it's a creamy cheese.
Yeah, mine's cream cheese.
What?
It's like a cream cheese bagel.
Right.
It's like smoky. It's
You
smoked
picked up a hint of smoke on the very back of your tongue with that.
Pick up the smoke, but whatever little peat they put in it a lot more.
There's no peat in this, but because they heat it, there's always some kind of smoke process to it. And it really brings it and that cinnamon spice alive. I get another flavor in this. You might know what a marzipan is? It's sugar and almond flour, basically. Really got just a hint of that with this. We're getting more of that out of the 15, but we got a hint of that with this whiskey. Let's finish it off. So the next whiskey we're going to taste is the 15-year-old Glenfiddich Unique Solera Reserve. Anyone tell me what they mean by Solera?
Probably has something to do with the sun.
What?
Probably has something to do with the sun.
Nope.
It's like a giant vat.
A giant vat. It's a Solera vat. And here's the cool thing about this whiskey and why it continues to win awards. This first whiskey came out it was released in 1998 at a 15-year-old whiskey, which means it was put down in 1983. The very first year it was put into a bottle was 98, and they took its new American oak, ex-bourbon American oak, sherry cask whiskey, and they put it all in a giant vat called a tun, T-U-N. It's a very special tun. It's made out of Oregon pine. And when they produced this whiskey and put it out, they left half of it in the vat. And the next year when they made it again, they put it all back in and mixed the same formula up, and then they left half of it in the vat. So every year since 98 that we've got this, there's still some of the original whiskey from 1983 in that vat. So by doing that, they're preserving their original flavors. They're adding their new flavors, because whiskey changes over time. Every cask is different. No two are the same. Or every time you got a whiskey, it would taste exactly the same. 2 bottles side by side in the same year, the same run, probably close. Get one 10 years older, they're going to taste a little different because things change. The climate changed, the rate of the angel share changed, the temperature changed. I mean, lots of things can affect it. So let's try this 15-year-old. So let's have a look at this. I actually think the color of this is richer than the 18. Others have argued with me.
It's more gold.
Yeah,
A little more gold, but it's a richer color, I think.
It doesn't look like mine.
it's warmer.
Okay, so something we didn't talk about in the beginning that I'm going to talk about now is whiskey, like wine, has legs. So if you tilt the glass up and back down, you can actually see the whiskey run back down the glass. It's either thick and wide or it's thin and slow. This is right in the middle. So you can by the legs tell if it's going to be light and fruity or creamy, rich and round. And this is going to be a little richer and a little rounder. So Let's get a nose. Smell that whiskey. Smells great, doesn't it? And now I'm gonna mess you up. I want you to find a table or something around you so you can set your glass down. I want you to take your whiskey, and I want you to put your hand over the glass, and I want you to splash it on your hand. I want you to rub your hands together.
Oh, I like it.
And now I want you to smell that whiskey. With your hands, you're warming it up in your hands, unless you're wearing a lot of cologne. And now I want you to pick the glass back up and smell the glass again. Two totally different smells. And don't get pulled over, because now your hands smell like whiskey.
Doesn't smell like that.
Is that not a unique? Because once you warm that whiskey up, you change the flavor. I tell you that to tell you this. A lot of you like ice cubes in your whiskey. There's no wrong way to drink whiskey. There's only one right way to drink whiskey. Scotch whiskey, and that's in Scotland. But there's no wrong way to drink whiskey. If you like an ice cube in your whiskey, put an ice cube in your whiskey. But here's what an ice cube does to your whiskey. Whiskeys are made two ways, chill filtered and non-chill filtered. A chill filtered whiskey is, they take the whiskey down to a certain temperature, somewhere near 36, 38, 40. And as they do, the solids in the whiskey solidify. They run it through a cheesecloth or a strainer or whatever, and they take the solids out and they bottle it. So if it's sitting on the shelf in the store and it gets cold, it doesn't get cloudy. But along with the fats, guess what you take away? Flavor. So when you put an ice cube in a glass of whiskey, chill filtered or otherwise, you close down all the flavors. So the first time you taste a whiskey, give it the respect to at least taste it. Have the bartender, if you're at a bar, pour you a little taste. Taste it in its raw state. Cask strength, however strong it is, however weak it is. Get the full flavor of that whiskey so you know what it's going to taste like. You like it like that, have it deep. You like it, it's Macallan 12 and that's what you drink and that's what you love, and you love it over ice, do it that way every time. But at least taste the whiskey before you've closed all the flavors out of it. So, chill filtered versus non-chill filtered, and what ice does to whiskey. If it's non-chill filtered and you drop a cube in it, it's going to get cloudy because all the fats and the solids are going to come out of it. All right, tease you long enough.
Does the same result happen with whiskey stones since it's not water?
Yes, because it's still cold.
Okay, so then it's
The
just
water
the
has nothing to do
temperature.
with it.
Okay.
It's the temperature. All right, so let's get a look. We looked at it. Got some legs, 3 noses, right, left, middle. Kind of a unique nose, isn't it? Unlike the other two. And let's get a drink. 15 seconds. What do you taste?
The sweet's back, a lot less bitter.
Got some bitter in the back. Lots of sweet.
It's very, it's a sticky sweet, like honey. It's
I
very-
saw, yeah, I call it chewy. It's a chewy whiskey.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of substance to it. Hits your mouth, it coats your tongue, it coats the top of your mouth, it coats your throat.
Raisins, maybe?
Raisins. So now we're talking about rich dried fruits. Leathery. I get a hint of tobacco in this whiskey. I get more marzipan in this than I do the other one. A little bit of that almond dust, almond flavor. So a nuttiness. You might taste a different nut, but that's what I get with almond. I get the sugar. Let's do it again. This time, just roll it around and swallow it. All right, for this one, I want you to do a dark chocolate. So we did a complement and a contrast. This one will both complement and contrast. So let the chocolate melt on your tongue. When it's almost gone, coat your tongue in the whiskey. That bitter that was in the back of your tongue, it's gone, isn't it? Now what do you taste besides dark chocolate?
A little bit of cherry.
Really pick,
Yeah, you pick cherry.
really pick it up now.
Yeah.
So it went from being almost sharp, sweet, cinnamony, all those flavors, to almost pure creme brulee. Smooth and easy, goes down, the bite's all gone. So the contrast is you lost some of that initial flavor that you had with this whiskey. And the good part is you picked up a whole new set of flavors with it. And it made it sweeter, not more bitter. So I'm going to tell you about the next whiskey, but we're not going to open it. We're going to open it when Nate's finished, and we're going to have it with our cigars. You're welcome to have any of these that are left if you had one that you prefer, but you've got to try the Age of Discovery. Glenfiddich did a series a few years ago called the Age of Discovery. One time, they'll never do them again. Like, this is the last bottle we had up front. When they're gone, they're gone. They're never going to make it again. They did 2 different ones finished in a wine cask, all 19 years old. The Age of Discovery is talking about the discovery of the Bourbon Trail and how they got the whiskey barrels from Kentucky down the Mississippi River to the ocean and on the ship, and how they discovered bourbon and how they got that bourbon cask from the United States to Scotland. And so this is what this Age of Discovery is about. Please come up later, open the box. It's got pictures of it. It talks about the whole series of what happened and how it happened. It's really cool. This is a wonderful, delightful whiskey. Spent its entire life in an ex-American bourbon cask. 19 years old. It'll be the oldest that we have. It'll be really nice with our cigars later. Please feel free after we're done. If you have any questions about whiskey that I can answer for you, I would love to. And I have a quote for you from my good friend Nicholas Palaki. Nicholas Palaki is a brand rep for a couple of different whiskey companies. And I told him, I need a nice quote for tonight, because I have some honorable guys that are poetic and that have a great respect for life and Renaissance. And this is the most profound thing that he could come up with for me. He said, let's drink to honor. She offered her honor, I honored her offer. And all night long I was honor and offer. If you can't come in her, come on her. So in Scotland, the toast is Slàinte. To your health, Slàinte.
Pour another drink if you need to, I guess.
Or 2.
Yeah. There you go.
Is there a bottle service?
Yeah, it's right there. Serve yourself, sir. Serve yourself. First off, I'd like to thank Dewayne. He's a special guy. He's an excellent person. He's got a very generous spirit, and he cares an awful lot about scotch and people. I appreciate you being here tonight, Dewayne, and doing this for us. Thank you. Along with Dewayne and Tony, and there's 2 other owners, this place is pretty special, along with the manager, Caleb. He's right there pretending not to hear me. He works awfully hard, and this place has become quite the sanctuary for me. Cigars are a form of meditation for me, but that's another talk. Who here knows what the laudable pursuit is? And it's okay if you don't. One guy, my partner. Okay. The laudable pursuit is a term to describe a worthwhile journey. And we use it quite often in our fraternity. But it's also a group that myself and Jason and another guy named Matt Anthony, who now lives in Washington, we have a website, and on that website we publish articles related to masonry, but our official byline is contemplative and transformative education for those seeking light. So we don't necessarily focus wholly on masonry. We try to post 2 articles a week. On our website, we also have a podcast. We've kind of hit some speed bumps with the podcast with one of our partners moving across the country, but we've worked that out with technology, so we should be releasing some new episodes soon. And then we also have on our website what we call the Gallery of Light. And what that is are just really nice pictures with some sayings or quotes that are maybe a little more authentic and a little more spiritual and a little deeper than the average stuff you see on the internet. Or at least that's our aspiration. So that's what we do, and we're the ones hosting this event tonight. And all of that being said, this is not a recruiting mixer. Okay? I remember when I was in college, various representatives from different religions would offer you pizza all day long to save your soul. This is not that. Okay, I promise. Tonight is about getting to know people that you don't know. It's about trying new things, and it's about broadening what and who you are. When I joined the Laudable Pursuit, I did so with a specific vision and a hell of a lot of enthusiasm, but I don't have any tools to make either of those things come manifest. Essentially, I was jumping into a world of tenured brethren with libraries, more information in their heads than I had ever seen in actual libraries. I didn't have a lot to offer, except for one thing. I'm different because I'm me. And you'll never meet another me, just like I will never meet another you. The goal, of course, is not to say that I am me. The goal is to get to another place where you're able to say, I am. I simply exist. And that is completely valid. But I digress. Joining the TLP, you may hear me say that's the trendy term for the Laudable Pursuit. I was primed and poised with the internet at my fingertips. I had limitless potential for impact and exposure. I had access to audio recording equipment, publication rights to the website, and I had nothing to say. I searched for some lofty opinion to dissect, but there was nothing. When finally, one day, I had a wave of emotion wash over me regarding a particular subject. Yes, I thought, passion, that's the key, right? So I captured it. I typed, I cried while I typed, and I got it out, I got it all down, and I sent it out. That's the good stuff. So I thought. Now, I get excited about things from time to time. And I mean, I get really excited. I think I have some profound revelation. I'm eager to share it because I think it might make some impact or facilitate a discovery by someone else. Some of the things that I've done, well, in my opinion, have been received extremely well. Some of them have fallen really flat. Sometimes I feel like I'm at the top of my game. I'm 10 steps ahead. And I'm tapping straight into the source. Sometimes I get so excited about what I'm doing and what I'm going to do and what we're all going to do that I can't sleep. My skin literally itches with the energy that's waiting to be unleashed into this or that. And I just lie there in bed, jittery. I feel plugged in. And sometimes I feel like I'm on the verge of a breakthrough or some grand awakening. But sometimes I feel like that's all bullshit. Now, I've always lived by the tenets of humility. I know that there are guys wiser than I doing the same thing. I know for sure that there are better writers and bigger thinkers, and they've already done the things I'm working up to and dreaming about. So who the hell am I to put my stuff out there? Surely it's been done before. Maybe it wasn't done in the way that I'm thinking about doing it, but they're the ones with the published books and the public recognition. Perhaps I should just defer and study their work. If anyone is going to stumble upon some cosmic truth, surely it's the ones that are already further down the path than I am. And I used to think that this was being humble until I realized that it was actually crippling me. There was one time, and it clicked. One time I found myself not doing something, electing not to do it because of those reasons. And I didn't even feel like trying. Fast forward, we were having a chat session amongst Jason and Matt and I, and the subject of imposter syndrome came up. I'd never heard of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, in case you haven't heard of it, is a psychological phenomenon in which people are unable to internalize their accomplishments. Despite external evidence of their competence, those with the syndrome remain convinced that they're frauds and do not deserve the success that they have achieved. Proof of success is dismissed as luck, timing, or as a result of deceiving others into thinking they are more intelligent and competent than they believe themselves to be. I'd never heard of this. The imposter, I previously figured was me. I thought I was the imposter. But it turns out that the imposter is actually the imposter. The imposter wasn't me. The imposter is not you. It isn't even your fear manifest in your subconscious. The imposter is not something to wrestle with and go back and forth to see if your stance is valid. It simply isn't real. And it has no place in your mind. Tonight, what I'd like to talk to you all about is you. The real you. Imposter and doubts aside, do you know your own power? So often as men of virtue, which I trust you all are, we examine the world. As masons and gentlemen of society, we hold ourselves to a higher standard. Now, not to say that we're inherently better than anyone else we meet, but that we aspire to recognize quite the opposite. We are not better than anyone else, and we're not worse. It's easy and fruitless to say that you're better than someone you meet in this area or that. And it's a difficult thing, but enriching, to encounter someone you meet and identify that component in them which you find lacking in yourself. These are typically the two ways that people view others and themselves, by comparison. And as the old saying goes, comparison is the thief of joy. We look at others so much that we often start the comparison automatically. Now, everyone here I know, or at least I know who brought you. And I believe that we're a group of high achievers. And as such, we must possess some capacity for self-awareness. But how do you measure yourself, if not against that of someone else? This is the system that's built into us as a society. We aren't taught another way, generally. The truth is that you can only measure yourself against yourself. The only way you can measure yourself is by comparing yourself to what you think you are. Now, sometimes that comes to you in the form of what you actually are, and sometimes that comes to you in the form of who you want to be. The problem here is that when you assess who you think you are, you're doing so with a body of work to evaluate this. If you're trying to determine if you're successful or progressing, you're looking at your past. Is your farther away past harder or more difficult than your nearer past? The way we evaluate if we're on our way to becoming who we want to be is to look at our past and see if it has changed enough over time as we near now. We can't see the future, and the important thing is that the past is already gone. Gentlemen, your past does not define you, nor does your conceived future. What we have is now. There is no comparison in the now. The now is now. And when I said it the first time, it was now. But that's already gone. And if I were to repeat it now, when I started talking about it, it didn't exist. And now it's in the past. it's gone. Now cannot be captured, and it cannot be defined. It simply is. It just exists. That's what we are now. We have nothing from the past, and nothing from the future counts for anything until it's brought into the now. I'd like to quote the great Alan Watts here. And if you awaken from this illusion, and you understand that black implies white, self implies other, life implies death, or so shall I say, death implies life, you can feel yourself not as a stranger in the world, not as something here on probation, not as something that has arrived here by fluke, but you can begin to feel your own existence as absolutely fundamental. Now, I'm not trying to sell you on this idea in the sense of converting you to it. I just want you to play with it. I want you to think of its possibilities. I'm not trying to prove it. I'm just putting it forward as a possibility of life to think about. So then, let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any other time you like. And you would naturally, as you begin on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure. And after several nights of 75 years of total pleasure each, you would say, wow, that was pretty great. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream in which I'm not in control. Well, something's going to happen to me, and I don't know what it is. Well, you would like that. You would come out of that and say, wow, that was a close shave, wasn't it? And then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream of where you are now. You would dream the dream of living the life that you are actually living today. That would be within the infinite multiplicity of choices that you would have, of playing that you weren't God. Because the whole idea of the nature of the Godhead in this idea is to play that he's not. So in this idea then, everybody is fundamentally the ultimate reality. Not God in the politically kingly sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you are all that, only you're pretending that you're not. If you know, you see that I, in the sense of the person, the front, the ego, it doesn't really exist, well, then you wouldn't be surprised if you woke up one day and found out that you were God. And then we get this strange feeling that we've never had in our lives, except occasionally by accident. Some people get a glimpse that we are no longer this poor little stranger and afraid in a world it never created, but that you are the universe. And you are creating it at every moment. Because you see, it starts now. It didn't begin in the past. There was no past. If the universe began in the past, it was now. And it's still now. And the universe is still beginning now. And it's trailing off like the wake of a ship from now. And as the wake of the ship fades out, so does the past. You will never find it there. Things are not explained by the past. They're explained by what happens now. That creates the past. And it happens here. Now, often we think of a path. For those not familiar with our fraternity, we think of like career path or life progression, the acquirement of money, comforts, things in storage. But when I'm talking about path, I'm talking about the path of discovery of self. The marriage of body to soul. The path, capital P, is about retreating within and pulling off the dusty canvas from the glowing light inside you. The core that sparked you into existence, it's still there. It is the secret fuel that drives you daily. It keeps you awake at night. It colors your dreams when you do sleep. And it makes you capable of giving and receiving love. It is the essence of self. and the discovery of the divine. This is what you are. So you see, my friends, there is no outside world to compare yourself to at all. The way you see yourself now, it's a mask. It's a cobbling together of things and memories, expectations and wants. You are not your job. You're not your personality type. You are not fat or skinny or weak or dumb. You are nothing. You're none of those things. But in that sense, you become everything. So never let that imposter in. Never look to your left or right for a sense of progression or worth. Only look within. Go all the way in, past yourself, to discover yourself. You are as limitless as what you think God is, and then add some, because that's what's actually in you. We are as limitless in our potential as the very energy that spawned our vast universe into existence and caused its expansion. It's still expanding. And that's in you. That is you. I'm going to close with this quote, and it's an idea that I meditate on often. Express yourself completely, and then keep quiet. Be like the forces of nature. When it blows, there's only wind. And when it rains, there's only rain. But when the clouds pass, the sun shines through. Gentlemen, thanks. Enjoy yourselves.
And I said, George, what is that? He goes, that's our new 60-year-old compartment. And I said, what does that sell for, George? He goes, $20,000. And I said, George, in Oklahoma, I can buy a 40-year-old compartment for $499. Are those other 20 years really worth $19,501? And George goes, fuck, no.
My name is AJ McCuller. I am one of the lucky guys that gets to work here for Tony and Dewayne and Kaylee. The cigar that you're going to be smoking is a Fuente Don Carlos Robusto. To give a little bit of background, I've been smoking cigars for a very long time. I grew up around them because my father, being Irish, always had a pipe or a cigar with him for the most part. I always enjoyed the smell, as most young boys do. That smell starts to stay with you and reminds you of your father, grandfather, things like that. I stopped for a long time. I got back into it. Cigars, like Dewayne was saying earlier, with whiskey, brings memories. For me, I get a lot of questions, especially working in the industry, of what was your very first cigar you ever had? I honestly can't answer that question. I don't remember it. My answer to that question is always, I can tell you certain cigars with certain memories for certain reasons, and those are the ones that are special to me. Cigars are something that, along with whiskey, along with everything else, bring back memories. I can smell a cigar and it brings me back to it. I can see a cigar and it brings me back to it, things like that. My favorite cigar of all time is a $6 cigar. It is not the best tasting cigar out there. It is not the most expensive cigar. It's my favorite because the memory with it was the very first one I got to smoke with my father. That in and of itself is very special to me. So cigars are always something that have kept me sane in very rough times. It calms me down, even in traffic, because I smoke in my car. And so sitting in there, you can definitely start to calm down and enjoy it a little bit. The other thing is I've realized that cigars over the years is 100% about community. Being here, getting to be with people, have brought me some of the closest people, almost as close as my family. Specifically, the three that I'm talking about that I get to work with. These guys I consider brothers, and I've known them for quite some time now, and I would do pretty much anything for them. And that's the great thing about cigars, is you get to sit down and have a conversation and enjoy the company of somebody else, and you get to talk about everything under the sun. And that's the beauty of it, because it gives you the time, it gives you the ability. If you can smoke a cigar inside of 15 minutes, that's great. I don't suggest it. You're going to get pretty sick. But because that time is there, you are allowed an opportunity that is almost becoming extinct in society today, which is to be able to sit down, have a conversation, and enjoy the company of another person outside of work, outside of almost anything else. So cigars have always been very something close to me and very something special to me. So hopefully this one brings a memory of tonight. You guys get to converse and hang out, and maybe meet somebody you don't already know. And maybe this one will bring a little bit of a memory that you get to look back on and enjoy. So we'll go over a little bit of the cigar itself. Cigars have three parts. They have a wrapper, a binder, and a filler. Specifically, the one that you are smoking does have three. Over that, this is what they call a Robusto. The Robusto itself is a 5 by 50. So the 5 is the inch, the 50 is the ring gauge, all the way around. The wrapper, binder, and filler on this one is a Cameroon wrapper. The binder and the filler are both Dominican. So that is the country in which they come from and how they're done. So the end of the cigar is the cap, which is where you will cut. The other end that's open is the foot. Okay? So if everybody wants to take a minute, there's a cutting station here. Go ahead and cut it. You want to cut a dime's width of the end. That will pull off the cap without cutting the actual wrapper to where it starts to unravel. So take very little bit off the end. As you start to go through it, most cigars are done either by thirds or halves, depending on the size of the cigar. So as you go through it, some cigars are more complex. You're going to get a little bit of different notes from the first third, second third, and then last third as you go through the entire cigar. The reason that they pair really well with whiskey and bourbon and sherry and things like that is just because the different flavors are enhanced, and I've learned a lot about that from Dewayne, of being able to drink and smoke at the same time. There's a lot of different whiskeys and bourbons that as you pair them with different cigars and vice versa, you're going to get different notes that come out in that tobacco because of the alcohol content, because of the flavoring and the spices and things like that. So a lot of different whiskeys pair really well with different types of alcohol, and they can actually enhance the flavor. And some of the cigars can actually enhance the flavor of whiskey. It's honestly usually just a pretty fantastic experience for the most part. As you guys are lighting, I know it's getting smoky, so we'll kind of go quickly here. What do you guys are starting to taste so far? Heaven. Fair enough. Nothing? You should taste a little bit. You should start to smell a little bit of woodsy.
A little cedar.
A little cedar. Yep.
Coffee.
Okay. Yep. A lot of coffee. So because of the Cameroon wrapper in this one, you're going to get a lot more coffee. You are going to get a lot more woodsy, which is why it does pair really well with all of this, is because you're going to get a lot of those flavors, which are going to pair really, really well with all the different fruits, with all the different cinnamon spices, a little bit of sweetness, and a lot of that toffee in the sweet back half of both the whiskey and the cigar will kind of start to smooth it out. So as you go through your cigar, it's going to start to smooth out a little bit. This cigar specifically, about halfway through, at the very beginning, you're going to get a lot of that harshness, a lot of the wood, a lot of that aroma. About halfway through, it's going to smooth out. You're going to taste a lot of sweetness. If you keep drinking with all this, you're going to start to taste a lot of that different fruit. It's going to bring it out a lot more, and you're going to be able to taste a little bit more of the cinnamon and wood. Cool.